Well, hello guys, we're doing a review reaction to someone talking about Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. So get started with the reaction. Ignore what you're watching. That's why I turn it down. What?
Whenever I post a video, at least partially related to Spider-Man, I always get vultures flying down, yelling at me.
We're on.
Whenever I post a video at least partially related to Spider-Man, I always get vultures flying down, yelling at me about how Homecoming isn't that good. Spider-Man 2 is better. Tom Holland can suck my dick. So the other day I was like, okay, fine. I haven't seen the Sam Raimi movies in a pretty long time. Maybe I need to refresh my opinions a little bit. So I went ahead, I rewatched the movies, and holy shit, these do not hold up. Now, I like to think I have a pretty good track record when it comes to my opinions, alright? I have a decent following of naive 11-year-olds, eccentric European weeaboos, and depressed alcoholic college students that seem to like and listen to my opinions. But I'm aware that I'm kind of pushing it this time. I'm just saying, I think the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies aren't as good as you remember. Now, I still love these movies, all three of them, to be exact. Yeah, you heard that right. But it annoys me that people look at the first two as some sort of superhero holy grail, when they're
all
not,
just the same
really
shit.
that good anymore. So let's look at all three of these movies and see why they really don't hold up and are kind of a little bit, just a little bit, of a mess. And yeah, I know everybody says Spider-Man 3 is the worst one, but if you ask me, all three of these movies are basically the same, and I'll elaborate more on that later. But for now, let's start at the beginning. Let's start with Spider-Man 1. So the first thing we're greeted with is a corny narration by Peter Parker, played by good old American sweetheart Tobey Maguire. And this is the one thing that I hate the most about the Spider-Man trilogy. I hate Tobey Maguire. Ever since I was a kid, I never really saw him as my definitive Peter Parker. He's kind of meek and wimpy, and that's supposed to be Peter's personality at first, but he never really gets over it. Even when he's Spider-Man, I still want to kick his ass because he's a huge dork.
It's you who's out, Gobby. Out of your mind.
And sometimes Tobey's performance is just really bad. There are some actors doing a really good job in these movies, so you really notice when somebody isn't doing that great of a job.
Who am I? You sure you want to know?
Blech. Also, at the mere 6-minute mark, we are shown the greatest character in the entire trilogy, Willem Dafoe as Norman Osborn. I'll get more into him later, though. For now, let's look at how Harry introduces his dad.
Peter, may I introduce my father, Norman Osborn?
Why would you introduce your dad by his full name? That's kind of weird, but whatever. Also, look at these high school students. Now, I know a lot of movies have people who aren't really playing their age, but this is kind of ridiculous. You see this guy? That's supposed to be their teacher. He's younger than they are. I gotta say, though, I love how every line this man says is whispered and sounds very aggressive and threatening.
The next person who talks will fail this course. I kid you not. Do you know that this is the largest electron microscope on the eastern seaboard? You were talking throughout that woman's entire presentation.
So anyway, Peter gets bitten by some brown recluse and then he dies peacefully in his sleep. So in the next scene, we get the beginnings of Norman Osborn's supervillain origin story. And I gotta say, I do like the pacing in this movie for the most part. Things go along in a fairly well-balanced way. You see the beginning of Peter's origin, and then right after you see the beginning of the villain's origin. It just keeps going back and forth like this. However, his motivations aren't really that clear before he turns into a crazy monster person. He seems mad that they're taking the project back to formula.
Back to formula?
I'm a dumb internet movie boy, so I don't know what that means, but it seems like he needs to get his little science project done really quickly, or the army men won't be very happy with him. Next, we see the first scene of what I'm going to call corny Sam Raimi shit. Why are there skulls? It looks like I added those in post, but that's for real. This is fucking hilarious, and it only gets better from here. The next scene is even funnier. Norman goes ahead and decides he's gonna be the human test subject, and this fucking doormat just goes along with it. Oh, I guess I'll just clean up the broken glass, asshole. Also, I think this little part is hilarious.
This is pretty hilarious.
Well, either way, the experiment goes horribly wrong, and he dies. This is a comedy movie. I don't care what anybody tells me.
Me too.
Now you guys know the rest. I won't nitpick the rest of this first act because that would be way too easy. Like I could mention how Peter's just gonna walk to school, but then the bus just appears and he's like, oh no, wait, I'm supposed to run after the bus.
Give me something. Thank you. I have something to wear at least. Please tell me this. Oh, sorry.
Like, what the fuck? You weren't even going to the bus stop. It's your own fault if you miss it now. And I'm most definitely not going to mention this unfortunately aged joke.
That's a cute outfit. Did your husband give it to you?
What if you did make it for him? Would that be so bad? Oh, Spider-Man, you're pretty homophobic. But one thing that does bug me is the pivotal scene where Uncle Ben gives his iconic speech. Because he's actually chastising Peter Parker for fighting Flash Thompson in a previous scene. Except Peter was fighting in self-defense. And Uncle Ben's like, oh, well, you shouldn't have done that. Just because you can beat him up doesn't mean you should. So what does Peter do with this advice? He spends the rest of his life beating people up.
That's true.
The context just don't make no sense. However, on an unrelated note, I think it's time to bring up something that I love about these movies. And that's the extras. I'm serious, look in the background of any shot and just find a random person. You'll get a whole new level of entertainment out of these movies. In this movie, you'll see background characters that don't give a shit, people who have no idea where they are. Even main characters have a chance of devolving into idle sims when they're not the focus of the scene. It is really bizarre. So for those of you who aren't aware by now, this movie has a certain flow to it. We see Peter do stuff, and then we see Norman do stuff. And then Peter and Norman meet up again, and the whole thing goes on like that until the movie's over. And this works mostly because, like I said, Norman Osborn is fucking hilarious.
It's true.
Maybe it's just me, but every scene with him makes me laugh. He could be doing something completely normal, and it's still hilarious to me. It's like Willem Dafoe is an alien pretending to be a human.
Peter, the Science Award. That's terrific.
Yeah. I am now going to share some of my favorite moments from Norman Osborn in this movie. I like the reaction he has when Harry offers Peter to work for him. He looks so happy. Look at his face. I don't even need to describe this part. It kind of speaks for itself. I love how his whole plan to recruit Spider-Man is to drug him, kidnap him, tie him up, and have a dad talk with him on a rooftop about how New Yorkers are dicks and they're not worth saving.
Right.
I like how he dresses up as an old lady, complete with a stock sound effect, just so he can get the jump on Spider-Man. And then the scene ends with this great line.
No one says no to me!
Sometimes he just shows up for no reason, like this jump scare. However, a character in these movies that I do not like is Aunt May. Aunt May has the worst pep talks in this movie.
I can't help thinking about the last thing I said to him. He tried to tell me something important, and I threw it in his face.
You loved him.
Wow, she's so wise. Aunt May is supposed to be Peter's moral compass, and in these movies, she's kind of rude. But I'll get into that in the next movie, where she is just the biggest asshole. Ow! So anywho, the second half of this movie hits, and you realize that we are now watching a completely different movie. And I couldn't be happier, honestly. This movie is so wild, and I think that's why everybody loves these movies. In the second half of the movie, we're also introduced to the actual best character, J. Jonah Jameson. Even when I read the comics, I hear his voice in my head. Not only is his performance good, but it's like his scenes have a completely different writing staff. His lines are legitimately funny in this.
Mr. Jameson, Spider-Man. Hoffman? Yeah? Hoffman?
To the point where I'm pretty sure he's making some of this stuff up.
Spider-Man wasn't attacking the city. He was trying to save it. That's slander.
It is not. I resent that. Slander is spoken. In print, it's libel.
Also, do you guys remember that Elizabeth Banks is in these movies?
No.
Yeah,
no.
no. Nobody remembers that. So once the festival scene happens, we get a really good idea of how much this movie has completely lost it. Where before the special effects were mostly hidden or just briefly shown, this movie is now a CGI nightmare. And if you think I'm being mean to a movie that came out in 2002, let's see what a real critic has to say.
You know, my thumb is down on this movie, but it's sort of a split decision. When you see Spider-Man flying through the skies and leaping between buildings, he looks like an artificial cartoon character. He moves too fast, without the weight and presence of flesh and blood.
See, they even thought it looked like shit back then, so leave me alone. This part here always kind of bothered me too. See, Goblin has these fucking bombs that turn people into skeletons. Yeah, for real. Anyway, he throws it at this balcony, and Harry and MJ are also on this balcony, like they're right next to each other. But the bomb only kills these people. Not only kills them, it fucking vaporizes them. But why didn't MJ get hit? She saw it happen. She literally watched this happen right in front of her. But she's fine. I mean, maybe you gotta be like really, really close to it. I don't know. Now I'm gonna show you guys a brief clip, and it showcases exactly why I love this movie and why I think this movie is a huge joke. Everything that this movie symbolizes in my mind is in this clip.
Hello, my dear.
This clip has everything. Goofy-ass Willem Dafoe acting, screaming women, which Sam Raimi loves, by the way, but
Yeah,
we'll get into that later, and hilarious extras. I did not edit that clip to be any faster. That's just the pace of these movies. This festival scene is just really a masterpiece. I can cut out 5 seconds at any point of this whole scene, and you have unintentional comedy gold. So the scene ends with a nice 1-2 punch. First, we get one of the funniest lines in the movie.
Kill me again, Spider-Man!
And then Peter Parker kidnaps Mary Jane, and the crowd cheers him on for doing this. You don't think she needs to, like, go to the hospital? Because she was trapped under fucking rubble. And people have also pointed this out before, but that's obviously a mannequin in a Spider-Man costume, and her hair is blowing in the wrong way. Anyway, let's look at more goofy scenes out of context. This movie is so fucking funny. It's pretty clear that this movie is the goofiest thing to be put on film in the year 2002. I mean, the climax has the villain literally holding the love interest in one hand and a metal box of children in the other, and Spider-Man has to pick which one he's gonna save. If something this stereotypical happened in a superhero movie today, there would be public outcry about how silly it is. But to top it off, you get the funniest line in the whole movie. And I mean it. Out of everything I've shown you guys, this line is my favorite. I have memorized this speech. It is truly iconic to me as one of the greatest and cheesiest superhero movie monologues.
Spider-Man! This is why only fools are heroes. Because you never know when some lunatic will come along with the sadistic choice. Let die the woman you love, or suffer the little children.
Truly a masterpiece. As a regular superhero movie, I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10. But as a comedy, 10s across the board, baby. Comedic gold.
Don't tell Harry.
So now we've arrived at the Citizen Kane of Spider-Man movies, or so people say. Spider-Man 2.1. That's the one I have, I'm sorry. Now, while the point of this video is to bring up the crummy aspects of this movie and kind of laugh at it, I gotta admit that it's 100% undeniable that this is the best movie out of the trilogy. It's way funnier than the first one, it has some good emotional moments, and it's pretty exciting to watch. But it still has dumb shit, so let's start off with another Peter Parker narration.
Who am I? I'm Spider-Man, given a job to do.
Blech. Now, I would run through this movie scene by scene like I did for the last movie, but this movie's kind of hard to do that for, and I'd also be here for a really long time. I'm trying to go to bed. This movie follows a little bit of a formula, but not the same one as the last movie. In this movie, everything revolves around Peter Parker being shit on. And I know shitting on him is kind of half of the whole thing about being Spider-Man, but that's exactly my point. It should be half of the story. Rewatching this movie is really frustrating because everybody is an asshole. Mary Jane is an asshole, Aunt May is rude as fuck, Harry is the biggest piece of shit ever. This movie is just unrelentingly mean. The first thing Harry says to Peter in this movie is, "Hey, your friend Spider-Man killed my dad, and I fucking hate you." And then they start talking about other stuff. And then he's like, "No, but seriously, I really hate Spider-Man, and I hate you, and this is why Uncle Ben died." Every chance Harry gets, he talks about how Spider-Man killed his dad. Even when Spider-Man saves his life in the beginning of the movie, he doesn't even skip a beat. He's just like,
This doesn't change anything.
God damn, dude, you are really petty. It also doesn't help that James Franco's acting is kind of shitty in this movie.
I'm ruined. I have nothing left except Spider-Man.
And then we have Aunt May, who nags the shit out of Peter Parker in every scene that he's in. She abuses random people. Ow! And in the most egregious instance of mischaracterization, she makes Peter feel more guilty for Uncle Ben's death. At a crucial point in the movie, Peter is like, "Hey, Aunt May, it's been eating me up inside. I basically caused Uncle Ben's death. I didn't know how to tell you, and I'm so sorry. All I want is forgiveness." And she's basically like, "Wow, you're a piece of shit. Bye." And then she just leaves. She leaves him there. Even when Peter comes back and he tries to talk about it again, to get some closure, she's basically like, "Well, you fucked up, but whatever." This is not Aunt May, and it makes me really mad. But even though Aunt May has the worst scene, and she's one of the worst characters in the movie, she still isn't the #1 worst character. No, that award goes to Mary Jane Watson.
Thank you.
The most petty and manipulative person in the entire series. She spends the whole movie fucking with Peter's emotions. At the end of the first movie, he's like, "Hey, listen, I'm sorry, we can't be together. I gotta do my own thing." It's sad, but hey, he's being straight with her. And in their first scene in this movie, she tries to make the moves on him, and he's like, "Hey, whoa, hold up. Yeah, no, I'm still trying to be friends here. I don't want to date you." And she's like, "Oh yeah? Well, fucking kiss me, you pussy. Look how cute I am. I baked you a fucking cake." And he's like, okay. Oh boy, yeah.
Oh boy, yeah.
And she's like, "Admit you love me. Admit you love me, Peter." And he's like, "No, I don't want to." So she takes it easy. She backs off a little bit. She doesn't freak out or anything, except she does this shit. And then a second later, she turns around and she's like, "Oh, well, you know what? I have a boyfriend anyway, so fuck you." And she seriously says it just to fuck with him. But then you learn that she's only fucking this other guy because she's mad at Peter Parker. She agrees to marry him right after she yells at Peter Parker. It's just because she's mad at him.
Punch me, I bleed.
Blech. So then in the weirdest scene of the movie, she has this fucking
that's
experiment with her fiancé where she makes him kiss her like Spider-Man kissed her in the first movie. What if your girlfriend went up to you and was like, "Hey, can you kiss me like this one guy used to kiss me? This one guy that I just kissed in an alleyway one time? I just want to, see what it feels like." What the fuck? No! But that's not the only frustrating plot device. Dr. Octopus is also a big dumbass. Firstly, he has this extremely dangerous demonstration in his fucking apartment with no protective gear given to anybody in the room other than goggles for himself. And then when he turns evil, his entire supervillain plot is, "Well, I gotta finish my science experiment. Might as well." I get that you're supposed to be crazy now because of the AI of the metal arms, fucking with his mind. But why the fuck do they want to finish the fusion reactor? What do they care about sustainable energy for? I don't get it. He's one of the best characters in the Spider-Man universe with really complex goals and motivations. But here he's just a fucking goofball.
Butterfingers.
I will say, though, that one of the best scenes in the movie is definitely the fucking horror scene that plays at the end of the first act. This is so reminiscent of Evil Dead that it makes me kind of giddy. Like, look at this. Tell me this is not from Evil Dead. For real. And to top it off, this scene is full of the other staple of this trilogy, screaming women. I mentioned it briefly before, but Sam Raimi loves screaming women. Even when the movie isn't being campy and it's not being serious, it's just being really awkward. Tobey Maguire can't have a normal scene with somebody.
We sure showed him.
What do you mean, we?
Oh.
So anyway, Peter Parker beats up Dr. Octopus, he tells Mary Jane he's Spider-Man, and then she leaves her fiancé on their wedding day and decides to be with Peter Parker. Which is fucked up, but whatever. Oh, she also says that she doesn't mind that he's Spider-Man and she'll do whatever it takes to be with him, and that she'll be there for him no matter what. Except in the next movie where she leaves him because he's Spider-Man. Anyway, this movie's dumb as hell. 7 out of 10. I love it.
Okay, that's pretty
Okay, so everybody knows that this movie is bad. And I'm not about to talk shit about Spider-Man 2 and go ahead and say this one's good. And I almost wasn't even going to talk about it because everybody already knows the funny things in it. But I can't help it. This movie's hilarious. However, while the movie is bad, it's actually pretty consistent in its tone. This still feels like a Spider-Man sequel, even if it is a really stupid one.
How's the pie?
So good.
So this movie goes ahead and starts off with another...
It's me, Peter Parker.
God damn it. You think after 2 movies he'd probably get good at this. But no, he doesn't. Now if you ask me, the best part about this movie is the fact that the wackiness starts at the very beginning. It's not a gradual build-up like it is in the last 2 movies. This movie starts off as a shit show. At the 10-minute mark, we already see 2 antagonists. Harry starts juicing with the goblin serum, and a fucking meteorite lands in Central Park with the symbiote. This movie's trying to juggle all of this shit at once, and it really doesn't work. Also, the symbiote coming from outer space is fucking stupid. I know that's how it is in the comics, but there's a lot more context in the original story. With everything that we know about this universe so far, telling me that aliens exist is kind of a stretch. So after all that, Harry ambushes Peter and tries to fucking murder him in the street. We are not even 1/6 through the movie at this point. Now, all things considered, I actually like this fight. It's pretty exciting. We know Peter isn't gonna die because the movie just fucking started. But the main thing at risk here is the wedding ring. It adds an extra threat to the fight, and it's good for making the audience engaged. Now, right after this scene, we're thrown into the Sandman's origin story, because like I said, this movie has no fucking breaks. However, him turning into Sandman is actually one of the best sequences in the whole movie. The effects have aged pretty well, and with no dialogue and beautiful music, it's an excellent example of wordless storytelling. It's kind of weird because if you look at this scene on its own, it's kind of beautiful, but then you remember it's in the same movie as this scene, and you get kind of upset. Anyway, Harry has amnesia now, which, as everybody knows, is probably the worst plot device in the history of storytelling. He seriously hit his head and forgot the entire last 2 movies. That is more than ridiculous. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Oh, also, James Franco has gone from being a bad actor to being an insane one.
I got here as fast as I could.
You know that face?
Now, unsurprisingly, Mary Jane is still the worst character in this movie.
Spider-Man gets attacked all the time.
This isn't about you. This is about me.
Remember how in the last movie she's like, hey, I love you, I'll support your lifestyle. Yeah, well, the first time he has to go out and do Spider-Man stuff, she's like, ugh, I didn't know this Spider-Man shit was gonna be full-time. The next scene is also really funny because we are now randomly introduced to all the new side characters. This random-ass motherfucker shows up and he's just like,
Oh my god, it's Gwen.
I'm sorry, who are you? This is the main villain, by the way, and he just shows up randomly. Now, all things considered, Topher Grace's performance is not actually that bad. I actually really like it.
See, photography, it's not just about, no offense, flagpoles, whatever. It's about lighting.
And it kind of upsets me that people blame him for why this movie sucks. He's actually perfectly playing the jerky, hot-headed foil to Peter Parker. He's just one of the better parts of the movie when he's not being Venom. Because when he gets the symbiote, he kind of sucks. Once he turns into Venom,
He
he's
should have been
just...
Carnage.
I like being bad.
That would have been a lot better.
It makes me happy.
fucking ridiculous. Honestly, if this movie was just about one villain, one fucking dude, it could have been fine. Harry's motivations are clearly defined all the way from the first movie, and he would have made a great villain on his own. Sandman has a very compelling story, and the way he ties back to Peter could be interesting if written well. Eddie Brock serves as a great foil to Peter, his narrative opposite. He represents something that we haven't seen in these movies yet. A person like Peter Parker, except motivated by his own selfishness instead of selflessness. Any one of these dudes would have been fine. Making a Spider-Man movie should be so fucking easy, but most of them suck. I'm so mad. So anyway, Mary Jane gets kicked out of her play because she can't sing for shit, and she sees Peter swing by, and she actually gets mad at him. Yeah, forget being supportive of the Spider-Man lifestyle. Now you're actually actively jealous of your own boyfriend. And then she even has the audacity to get mad when he kisses a random girl. that he doesn't know. Right in front of her. Peter, why did you do that? This movie's just basically Mary Jane and Peter Parker being pissy at each other again, because we haven't seen enough of that. Because we have the same general storyline in every single one of these movies. So now Spider-Man decides to be evil, and he wears his hair different, and he says bad words.
You'll get your rent when you fix this door!
And everybody likes this part of the movie. This is everyone's favorite part of the movie. Everybody universally agrees that this is where the movie really shines. Now, this movie has a flow, much like the others do. However, the flow in this movie is fucking insane. They just have each villain getting kicked out of the story to make room for another villain. Harry's the bad guy at the beginning of the movie until he gets amnesia. Then Sandman comes in and he's the villain until Peter murders him. Then Harry decides not to have amnesia anymore and he's the villain again. Then Peter Parker kills Harry Osborn with a bomb and then Venom is the main villain after that. This movie is bananas. All while this is happening, we have bad acting.
It's over.
No. Please.
And just absolutely hilarious scenes.
Now dig on this.
The last act of this movie rushes along faster than you can say.
Oh boy, yeah.
Eddie Brock gets the symbiote, and immediately afterwards, him and Sandman just find each other wandering the streets. Then they steal a taxi, kidnap Mary Jane, and build a death trap for Spider-Man. This all happens in the span of like a couple minutes. This movie is so sluggishly paced until the point where all this shit has to be shoved in immediately. Oh, and then Peter goes to Harry to recruit him to fight the bad guys, but Harry is now the Phantom of the Opera and he's sad and he hides in his castle. But then the butler comes out and says that Spider-Man didn't kill his dad, and that Spider-Man is innocent.
I loved your father as I have loved you, Harry.
I'm sorry, who are you? So the climax of this movie revolves around Peter saving Mary Jane. Does that sound familiar? Because it's been the climax in every single one of these movies. You see what I mean when I say these movies are all the same? I don't even care. It's so funny. 4 out of 10, really bad, but I like it anyway.
I don't feel so good.
If you ask me, all 3 of these movies honestly do make a pretty decent trilogy. People say Spider-Man 3 is the worst one, but if you watch all of them back to back, it really doesn't feel that much different from the other 2. So yeah, my opinion hasn't really changed. I prefer the new movies, but at the same time, I can still enjoy these movies for what they are. Because even when they're bad, they aren't as bad as The Amazing Spider-Man 2, even though I've never seen it. And I'm never going to see it. You guys are never going to get me to watch that movie. Because it's not going to happen. Maybe some other time. Bye, guys.
Okay, we're done with the Sam Raimi trilogy. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Goodbye. What the fuck?
Once I started looking for car insurance,
Hey, Freddy, what the fuck?
it was a no.
Okay, sorry.